tienen muchos recursos. Y muchos de esto, de que seguridad y defensa, muchos de estos dineros del Pentágono, del Departamento de Estado, va para apoyar a esos militares.
These military men that are in this picture, many of them are generals who are millionaires. They are people who support organized crime. They have a lot of resources. And a lot of the defense aid money that goes for security from the Pentagon or the State Department goes to these people.
Y nosotros como los ciudadanos, el pueblo, no tenemos ni seguridad ni defensa.
And we as the public neither have security or defense.
En esta otra slide que queremos ilustrar, el profesor Chomsky, un hombre muy directo, señala que la lucha contra las drogas es una excusa de Estados Unidos para criminalizar a los pobres. Y tiene mucha razón.
In this next slide, we have a picture of Professor Chomsky, who's a very direct man. And he says that the drug war is used as an excuse for the U.S. to criminalize the poor. And he's right.
Y en la otra podemos ver soldados americanos enseñándole a disparar a los soldados hondureños. ¿Verdad? ¿Para qué? Si nosotros no estamos en guerra.
In this other picture, we see American soldiers showing Honduran soldiers how to fire their guns. Why? We're not at war.
Todos esos disparos y esas armas nuevas se utilizan para criminalizar a los movimientos sociales que estamos en las calles protestando por gobiernos corruptos y criminales.
Those shots, those new arms, are used against us to criminalize the social movements, the people out in the streets protesting a corrupt and criminal government.
Y realmente es una pena y son muchas bajas las que se están dando. Mientras en los hospitales no hay medicina, se está muriendo la gente. Mientras no hay una educación de calidad para los jóvenes. Los jóvenes para poder paliar un poco la pobreza tienen que ir al ejército, aprender a disparar para matar a su propia gente.
It's a real shame. And this happens while we don't have medicines in our hospital, while people are dying, and we don't have quality education. So what these youth do to try to escape poverty is join the military, to learn how to kill their own people.
Y el resultado de todas estas políticas es más migración que viene de manera descontrolada por esa frontera de México, que es como la muerte. Y ahora no solo hombres vienen mujeres y con niños, ¿verdad?
So the consequences of these policies are increased immigration that is an uncontrollable thing, where people migrate through the Mexican border and take this journey of death. And now we even see mothers going with their children.
Nosotros allá tenemos algunas comunidades que el año pasado algunas escuelas tuvieron que cerrar.
We have some communities that last year had to close down some of their schools because they were being emptied.
Y eso no se ha parado, eso sigue. Hay $1 millón que están pidiendo Salvador, Honduras y Guatemala. Dice que para controlar la migración. Mentira, eso no es cierto.
And this sort of thing continues. Now there is this $1 billion proposal that will go to Honduras, Guatemala, and El Salvador, supposedly to control immigration, but that's not really what they're trying to do.
Y lo que decíamos, estamos perdiendo nuestro territorio, nosotros allá, ¿verdad? Y quedamos muy vulnerables ante oportunistas transnacionales como piratas de que en la antigüedad, ¿verdad? Que andaban ahí en el mar asaltando los otros que llevaban oro robado de las Américas.
So as I said, we're losing our territory and we're becoming vulnerable to opportunists like transnational corporations who are like pirates in the ocean in the old times when they would steal, where they would attack people to steal their gold, their stolen gold from the Americas.
Eso es lo que tenemos. Y criminalización de los movimientos sociales. Ahí tenemos un gobierno terrorista y basado en armas y en nombre de que se van a defender. ¿Defender de quién? Esa es la pregunta.
Well, and then we have the criminalization of our social movements. And what we have in reality is a terrorist government that is based on arming itself and defending itself, but from what?
Tenemos los escuadrones de la muerte. El Plan Colombia ha sido trasladado a Honduras.
We have death squads in our country, and Plan Colombia has been transferred to our country.
En este slide, en esta lucha de las drogas, en la Mosquitia, una lancha cargada de pasajeros civiles, pero no estoy hablando de lanchas, las rápidas de las que hay acá, son lanchas hechas a mano, ¿verdad? Lentas.
Here on this slide, you see a situation that happened in La Mosquitia. There in this area, there was a civilian boat who was traveling, but I'm not talking about speedboats, I'm talking about handmade boats.
Y la DEA, que también hay una base americana allá en La Mosquitia, aunque no hay carretera, solo puede llegar uno por lancha o por avión, ¿verdad?
And in this area, the Mosquitia, there are no roads. You can only travel by plane. There are no roads. You can only travel by boat or plane. But the U.S. has a military base there. And this case involved the Drug Enforcement Agency.
Confundieron esa lancha de civiles que iban a hacer sus cosas cotidianas, sus labores, con narcotraficantes. Y fue ametrallado esta pequeña embarcación. 6 personas murieron, 2 mujeres embarazadas.
And the Drug Enforcement Agency confused this civilian boat where people were just running their daily errands for drug traffickers. They attacked them, 6 people died, 2 pregnant women.
Desde luego eran helicópteros bien artillados, ¿verdad?
And these were heavily armed helicopters.
Para terminar, hay 2 cosas que quisiéramos finalizar diciéndoles. Con todo esto que hemos planteado en estos minutos, nosotros como organización estamos utilizando el sistema interamericano, que es lento, que es muy burocrático, pero eso es lo que tenemos, ¿verdad? Y la semana pasada en San José, Costa Rica, se estaba reuniendo la Corte para conocer 2 casos que hemos planteado ahí sobre el territorio garífuna.
Finally, with everything that I've talked about, I want to mention that my organization has used the inter-American court system to do some things. We submitted 2 lawsuits with the courts, both related to Garifuna communities, and the Inter-American Court was meeting last week to review these 2 cases.
Esperamos una resolución esta semana, lo más tarde la próxima semana.
We're expecting a ruling to be a ruling either this week or next week.
Pero hemos invertido 24 años en esto.
But we've invested 24 years in these lawsuits.
Y contando 6 años que estuvimos nosotros presos por una acusación falsa de tráfico de drogas.
Including 6 years that I was jailed falsely under the accusation of being a drug trafficker.
Pero lo que decíamos nosotros, y con esto vamos a tratar de terminar para dar espacio para algunas preguntas, es que sobre lo agresivo de las políticas públicas, hay otro caso en la Corte sobre las charter cities. Las charter cities es como un premio que le está dando los Estados Unidos a los golpistas, repito, ¿verdad? Por haberse portado también de romper el sistema democrático de nuestro país.
So I want to end with this that is related to the aggressive public policies we see. There is yet another lawsuit against the government of Honduras, and it relates to something called the charter cities. This is yet another prize the U.S. has given to the people who did the coup for behaving so well and breaking our democracy.
Las charter cities es una idea de un economista norteamericano, se llama Paul Romer, y que tiene que ver con declarar zonas habitadas o no habitadas en nuestro país para desarrollar zonas exclusivas de desarrollo. O sea, para nosotros en español es ciudades modelo.
Charter cities was an idea conceived of by an American economist by the name of Paul Romer. And in this idea will establish exclusive special development zones in either populated or unpopulated areas.
En estas charter cities van a tener sus propios militares, su propia policía, su propio sistema judicial, y su propio gobernador, y su propio sistema de educación. O sea, un estado dentro de otro estado.
These charter cities will have their own military, their own police, judicial and educational systems, and also their own governor.
Y están incluidas en la primera charter city que se han declarado, hay 5 comunidades garífunas.
And in the first charter city that has been declared, there are currently 5 Garifuna communities living there.
Y bueno, Paul Romer ha sido nombrado uno de esos gobernadores que van a los titulares en estas zonas exclusivas de desarrollo económico.
And Paul Romer has been named one of the governors of these charter cities.
Bueno, nosotros estamos asustados y preocupados porque, y con este término, es que hubieron 4 jueces de la Corte Suprema hondureña que en principio dijeron que eso no se podía hacer y fueron despedidos.
Well, we're really scared and worried about this. There were 4 judges, Supreme Court judges, who, when this law was, or this legislation was being reviewed, voted against it.
Y fueron despedidos.
And they were fired for that.
Y llamaron a 4 jueces más para que pudiesen aprobar la ley.
And they brought in 4 new ones who would approve this as a law.
Entonces lo que tenemos es una democracia disfrazada.
So really what we have is a false democracy.
Porque eso de estos jueces fue otro golpe de Estado, porque ningún poder puede intervenir otro poder, según lo que entiendo sobre la democracia.
And this was essentially another coup that happened with the firing of these judges, because as I understand it, one power cannot intervene in the process of another power.
Y bueno, esperamos que la Corte también se pronuncie esta semana sobre esta situación, porque si no, nosotros como pueblos que hemos resistido durante más de 2000 años todo tipo de agresiones, no nos vamos a dejar, nos van a tener que matar en nuestras comunidades. Como ya no hay tiempo y no quiero ponerlos muy tristes, vamos a recibir preguntas.
And we hope that the International Court will rule against Honduras in this case. And we as an indigenous group have been in resistance for over 2,000 years against all types of aggressions, acts of aggression. And we're not going to let this happen. And I don't want to end on such a sad note, so maybe we'll just open it up for questions.
Yeah, so we'll take maybe 10 minutes of questions. If you are a Spanish speaker, please feel free to ask your question in Spanish if you'd like. Just please also ask it in English for those of us who aren't Spanish speakers. Yes, sir.
No hay nada más extraño que la realidad. Hace 3 años yo enseñé otra vez un curso en El Salvador, donde había trabajado medio siglo antes. Entre tanto, la población había aumentado de 2 millones a más de 8.000 millones, de los cuales una gran parte había emigrado para Estados Unidos. La ocurrencia es lo que pago ahora no era el dólar. Por ahora llego al punto. Lo que me extrañó, que había gran cantidad de inmigrantes en El Salvador, de donde los inmigrantes fueron para Estados Unidos. Ahora había inmigración de Honduras. No lo entendí. Tal vez hoy usted me ayudó a entenderlo un poco.
Would you like to give your comments in English as well?
Quickly, yeah. There's nothing more bizarre than reality. 3 years ago, I taught again a course in El Salvador where I had worked half a century before. In the meantime, the population had increased. Small country at that time had 2 million, and now more than 8 million, of which they tell me a large part, probably 3-4 million or so, have emigrated to the United States. The currency had changed from colon to now was just dollars. But now, coming to the point, with all that emigration of Salvadorian to the United States, there was an enormous immigration from Honduras. And I couldn't grasp it. Why? Is it because of the dollar? Why is it? Now you help me to understand that.
Thank you. I think there's a question.
Voy a hacerlo en español. Bueno, ya en 2001 hice un gran libro sobre los garífunas, que está en la biblioteca para todos saber. En esa época, la organización que representaba los garífunas era ODECO. Y yo quería saber, porque ya ha pasado 14 años, ¿qué se pasó a ODECO? Y OFRAN es la única organización que representa a la gente garífuna.
Maybe I have the mic, so maybe I should be repeating the question. So the question is that there was an organization about 14 years ago representing the Garifuna people called ODECO. So he wants to know if it's still active.
And when did Ofrane resuscitate? Because Ofrane was dissolved and Odeco took its place. And I want to know the history of the relationship between the two.
And if Ofrane is now the only
is-
Griffin rights organization in the country.
Bueno, para empezar, no solo Frane es la representación de garífuna en Honduras. Hay muchas organizaciones, ¿verdad? Y como hay muchos problemas, la mayoría de estas organizaciones no asumen su rol. Dije al principio que la primera organización fundada para tutelar los derechos del pueblo es la Organización Fraternal Negra de Honduras.
Well, to begin with, Ofrane is not the only Garifuna organization. There are many because we have many problems. But some of them don't assume the role that they should. And as I mentioned earlier, Ofrane was the first one founded to defend the rights of the Garifuna people.
Ofrane nunca fue disuelta, lo que hay es un proceso de difamación y de levantar el perfil de las otras organizaciones que hacen negocios con el Estado. Una de ellas es la que usted menciona, ¿verdad? Por eso,
Ofrane was never dissolved as an organization. What we are experiencing now is strong efforts to defame us and raise the profile of other Garifuna organizations that are in fact working with the Honduran government, like the one that you just mentioned, Odeco.
o sea, que ellos están como los hijos predilectos del status quo, del gobierno. Mientras nosotros, y como ustedes pueden ver, hablamos de 2 casos en la corte, pero hay 3 más. Quiere decir que son 5 casos en el sistema interamericano. Eso plantea una realidad. No somos amigos del gobierno.
They're like the privileged sons of the government. And I mentioned that we have 3 cases in the Inter-American Court, but there are a total of 5 in the system, in the Inter-American system. So the reality is we are not friends with the government.
Y cuando usted me está hablando que estuvo en Honduras, yo estaba preso. y yo era el vicepresidente de la organización.
And when you were talking about being in Honduras, that was when I was in jail. And at that time, I was also the vice president of the organization.
Y yo estoy aquí hablando con ustedes por la presión internacional, sino una sentencia, estar en una cárcel de Honduras es una sentencia de muerte, o sea, te mandan ahí para que te maten.
And I am only here talking with you because of international pressure. And sending you to a jail in Honduras is like a death sentence because they send you to jail so that someone kills you.
Y si usted va a Honduras ahora, ahí está Odeco, ahí hay otras, hay muchas, y muchos de ellos son ministros y están trabajando con el gobierno, pero nosotros seguimos haciendo nuestro trabajo.
And if you go to Honduras today, you'll find Odeco there, as well as many other organizations, but most of them are ministers or officials in the government. They work in the government, and we continue with the work that we do.
That's it.
I have time for another question.
Yes.
Hi. First of all, thank you for this presentation. And you just briefly mentioned the case of Colombia. So right now I'm carrying out research in the Department of Chocó, Colombia, on the Pacific lowlands of Colombia. And what you are describing here is quite similar to what happened there and what is currently going on there. So I was wondering if you could talk a bit more about these similarities and eventually differences between these 2 scenarios, and if you have some sort of network with similar organizations which are probably experiencing the same problems and are trying to fight against the same enemies, I guess.
Y hay una delegación que viene llegando de Colombia, de Witness for Peace. Yo creo que ellos pudiesen articular mejor. Nosotros conocemos lo que es el Plan Colombia porque estamos sufriendo. Pero como ellos vienen llegando de allá, entonces ellos tienen un up-to-date de lo que está pasando allá y creemos que en efecto tenemos... nosotros antes del golpe llegaron los escuadrones de la muerte y ahorita todavía están ahí porque hay asesinatos cerca de la policía y nadie investiga nada. Tiene que ser, hay una complicidad de las autoridades.
I think that Witness for Peace might be able to talk about these similarities and differences between the Colombian and Honduran contexts because they just came back from a delegation there. But we certainly know about Plan Colombia because we are suffering due to it. But I think my colleague can explain a little bit more because she has more up-to-date information. But we do know that before the coup happened, the death squads were already in Honduras, and they continue to be there. They kill people, the police are present, and they don't do anything. There's this complicity.
I'll just say briefly, I mean, we work in Colombia, Honduras, Mexico, because those are places where we see commonalities in terms of the effects of U.S. policy. I'll say the way that has happened has been different depending on the country. The dynamic around establishing free trade and NAFTA in Mexico and then coming in with the Merit Initiative, almost 20 years later, for me has been kind of a parallel process as in Colombia of having massive military aid and then coming in with a free trade agreement and the way that those two things play off of each other. I'll just highlight the Biden plan, which if you Google New York Times Biden Honduras, it'll come up with his New York Times op-ed celebrating the success of Plan Colombia and talking about how we need a similar model in Central America. He's proposed $1 billion in the 2016 appropriations bill, which will be voted on in February, to go towards Guatemala, Honduras, and El Salvador. It's more money in development aid and less in military aid, but we see kind of violent patterns in terms of how those things are connected, so we want to pay attention to that. I'll also just say briefly, I think the rhetoric around how we talk about the two countries is distinct because of the lack of a historical armed conflict in Honduras. And so the way that we don't talk about paramilitaries in Honduras. And for me, there's no difference, in terms of what the dynamics are and what's going on there. And that the paramilitaries kind of fall into our analysis of Colombia because there's an armed conflict that's outside of corporate interest or military roles and those sorts of things. But for me, there are a whole lot of parallels and a lot to learn from both the same politics, U.S. politics and policies being enacted there, and just connecting solidarity and resistance movements and what we've learned from the powerful work of folks in Colombia. And I just talked about the Biden plan, just some other thoughts about what you can do. Ofrane just sent a letter to the World Bank to call for a stop in funding of the Tela Bay tourism project. That's what you heard about in the video. That money is the same sort of thing that this development aid coming from the Biden plan would go through. So it's not direct military aid, it's development aid, but still has this similar consequences in terms of potential displacement of people, and in terms of the effects on workers and workers' rights and that sort of thing. And we'll be circulating a copy of that letter if you signed up for our email list that you can sign on and send a support letter to the World Bank as well. And then we just listed some ways that you can advocate for just foreign policy, including free and fair elections. There's a clear role of the United States and other international observers in terms of just supporting democracy and the democratic process in Honduras. Community ownership over natural resources, prior consultation for development. That's something that is not only honored in national law, but through the United Nations treaties on the rights of indigenous peoples. And monitoring any U.S. funds to the Honduran government and military The Leahy law is what we use to directly sanction certain brigades or certain police forces as ones that are committing the most atrocious human rights abuses. And so there is a way to kind of decide who gets our military aid on the ground. I believe just yesterday, the U.S. government made a decision to pull out some of the Merida Initiative aid, which is going to Mexico because of human rights violations. So that is something that the Congress does in terms of kind of our connection to military aid in a corrupt system that's connected to a lot of violence. And finally, I'll pull you back to your yellow sheets there. I'd encourage you to go on a delegation with Witness for Peace. You can learn a whole lot in an hour while
tienen muchos recursos. Y muchos de esto, de que seguridad y defensa, muchos de estos dineros del Pentágono, del Departamento de Estado, va para apoyar a esos militares.
These military men that are in this picture, many of them are generals who are millionaires. They are people who support organized crime. They have a lot of resources. And a lot of the defense aid money that goes for security from the Pentagon or the State Department goes to these people.
Y nosotros como los ciudadanos, el pueblo, no tenemos ni seguridad ni defensa.
And we as the public neither have security or defense.
En esta otra slide que queremos ilustrar, el profesor Chomsky, un hombre muy directo, señala que la lucha contra las drogas es una excusa de Estados Unidos para criminalizar a los pobres. Y tiene mucha razón.
In this next slide, we have a picture of Professor Chomsky, who's a very direct man. And he says that the drug war is used as an excuse for the U.S. to criminalize the poor. And he's right.
Y en la otra podemos ver soldados americanos enseñándole a disparar a los soldados hondureños. ¿Verdad? ¿Para qué? Si nosotros no estamos en guerra.
In this other picture, we see American soldiers showing Honduran soldiers how to fire their guns. Why? We're not at war.
Para matar a su propia gente.
It's a real shame. And this happens while we don't have medicines in our hospital, while people are dying, and we don't have quality education. So what these youth do to try to escape poverty is join the military, to learn how to kill their own people.
Y el resultado de todas estas políticas es más migración que viene de manera descontrolada por esa frontera de México, que es como la muerte. Y ahora no solo hombres vienen mujeres y con niños. ¿Verdad?
So the consequences of these policies are increased immigration that is an uncontrollable thing, where people migrate through the Mexican border and take this journey of death. And now we even see mothers going with their children.
Nosotros allá tenemos algunas comunidades que el año pasado algunas escuelas tuvieron que cerrar.
We have some communities that last year had to close down some of their schools because they were being emptied.
Y eso no se ha parado, eso sigue. Hay $1 millón que están pidiendo Salvador, Honduras y Guatemala. Dice que para controlar la migración. Mentira, eso no es cierto.
And this sort of thing continues. Now there is this $1 billion proposal that will go to Honduras, Guatemala, and El Salvador, supposedly to control immigration, but that's not really what they're trying to do.
Todos esos disparos y esas armas nuevas se utilizan para criminalizar a los movimientos sociales que estamos en las calles protestando por gobiernos corruptos y criminales.
Those shots, those new arms, are used against us to criminalize the social movements, the people out in the streets protesting a corrupt and criminal government.
Y realmente es una pena y son muchas bajas las que se están dando. Mientras en los hospitales no hay medicina, se está muriendo la gente. Mientras no hay una educación de calidad para los jóvenes. Los jóvenes para poder paliar un poco la pobreza tienen que ir al ejército, aprender a disparar.